On this example, we're given an equation with some x's, some y's going on here. We're told that y of 4 equals negative 24, and our goal is to find y prime of 4 by implicit differentiation. So first thing I want to mention on this is this y of 4 equals negative 24 can be a little bit confusing as far as notation goes. Basically, we're treating y as though it's a function name in a sense. So we're plugging in a 4 and we're getting out a negative 24. So when we use these values, we're going to go x value with 4 corresponds with y value of negative 24. All right, with that said, let's jump into the implicit differentiation. So looking over here, some of this is going to be very straightforward, I think. If we see the 5x to the second power, that first term, what we can do is we can simply treat this as though it's the power rule. We can say the 2 comes down, gets multiplied by the 5, so we're going to get 10x, and then we reduce the exponent by 1. So that 2 becomes a 1. Now we typically don't write dx over dx next to this, but we are differentiating with respect to x along the way. We don't write dx over dx because same thing, numerator and denominator becomes a 1, and there's really no great reason to write a 1 next to this. All right, moving on to the next term, also not going to be too bad, I don't think. We have 5x, which is linear. The derivative of that's just going to be 5, right? Kind of the slope of the line, thinking linear. And again, our variable was x, so we could put a dx next to this, but not really worthwhile. All right, that next term, though, is a little bit more complicated. We have two variables in this case. We have an x and a y being multiplied together. So in this case, we're going to need to use the product rule. So the product rule, I'll kind of map it out here, thinking f and g. We need the derivative of one of these times the other, plus leave the first one alone, multiplied by the derivative of the second. All right, so kind of one at a time as we look at this, we have the first f is x, right? So we need the derivative of x, which is simply going to be a 1. Again, think linear if you'd like. Our variable is x. We don't need to put a dx next to that, but we're going to multiply that by leaving g alone. That's just going to be y. Next, we copy down the first function, f, which in our case works out to be x. And then we want to multiply by the derivative of g, which is the same thing as the derivative of y in our case. So that's going to be 1. But in this case, be careful because our variable is y. We do need to include a dy dx, or I guess in our instructions, we were told this can be thought of as y prime. Just different notations. All right, on the right-hand side, thinking about the derivative of 4, well, 4 is a constant. Its derivative is going to be 0. All right, all that remains in this case, the next steps, I guess I'll say, are we want to get our y prime on one side all by itself. So what I'm going to suggest is, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and move this last term that includes the y prime to the other side. So I'm going to subtract x y prime from each side. And I left off that multiplying by 1 in front. Doesn't really make much of a difference, right? So adding and subtracting the same term, those are going to eliminate each other. So on the left-hand side, we're going to be left with 10x plus 5 plus y. On the right-hand side, negative x y prime. And remember, we're trying to get that y prime on one side by itself, so all that really remains here is to eliminate the negative x. It's connected with multiplication out in front of the y prime, so we can divide each side by negative x. And you can either do it to the entire side or to every single individual term on the left-hand side if you so chose. So these eliminate each other. We're going to get y prime on one side by itself. That's a great start, but we still need to finish this up. We were asked specifically, what is y prime of 4? So this kind of goes back to what we said earlier, that we can say for an x value of 4, we get a y value of negative 24. So let's replace what we have over on the left-hand side with these values. So on the left-hand side with our derivative, we can say 10 times an x value of 4 plus 5 plus a y value of negative 24 all over negative of an x value of 4 is going to be our y prime. From here, it's just a matter of simplifying down. So take our time as we go through this. 10 times 4 is going to be 40, plus 5 minus 24 to reduce down a little bit, all over negative 4. Just using those algebra skills, right? So we'll kind of work our way adding and subtracting, working left to right. So we'll go 45 minus 24, all over negative 4. So 45 minus 24, we're going to get to 21 over negative 4. And we can't really reduce down any further than that, so we're going to leave that as our final answer, right? No common factors between numerator and denominator. So I hope this helps out as you're working on implicit differentiation. Take your time, kind of map out whatever rule you're going to need along the way. That's why I tried to write out the product rule. Just kind of, if you write it down, then it becomes more of a fill-in problem as you work through it. So good luck as you're working on these.